Could dumb phones be a smarter choice for you and your family? I'm Amy Bell in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thank you for joining us on radio, TV, and live stream. And you can call us now on our top story. Has your small business been impacted by construction? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call it 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Now, before we get to that, a quick story with one of our reporters. So it's known for its picturesque setting, but Harrison Hot Springs has been the scene of some political ugliness and unrest. Since the fall 2022 municipal election, the small village has seen chaotic council meetings, the resignation of a mayor, and neighbors butting heads. So for more on this, and for a look at ways to curb further clashes across BC, we're joined by CBC reporter Chad Pawson. Good afternoon, Chad.
Hi, Amy.
A lot of drama here, so give us a general recap of all that's gone on.
Yeah,
in
you
Harrison.
hit some of the main points there with your introduction, but what listeners need to know about Harrison Hot Springs, of course, it's well known as this like getaway, and it's a beautiful resort in the lake, but it's governed by a mayor and 4 councillors, and for the past 2 years, they have just not gotten along whatsoever. Ed Wood was the mayor of Harrison Hot Springs. He got elected in the fall of 2022. And he vowed to come in and kind of clean house, and he has a sort of prickly governance style. Well, that really clashed with 3 other councillors. And because of the butting heads and the acrimony and discord, they never really got a whole lot done. And we even, witnessed some of their council meetings, where there was one in the spring where Ed Wood didn't even speak. He alleged that there was a coup against him and didn't speak, and the meeting ended after about 10 minutes or so. So we really got more into the story there. And it's an example of one of several municipalities around the province where dysfunction among its elected leaders, what their roles are, what they're to do, how they're to interpret bylaws, how they're to govern together, is really fraught with all these problems right now. People aren't getting along, and the consequence is they're not getting business of the village. 1,500 people live in Harrison Hot Springs. Of course, there's things that need to be done there. They have a wildfire threat there. They have woodlands that need to be managed. They have public safety issues. They also have to help manage the businesses in the town that are trying to make a living off being a resort town. This business isn't getting done. So they've drawn a lot of attention to themselves for this smaller resort community, which is in striking distance of a city like Vancouver.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Mayor Ed Wood actually resigned in June over all of the conflict. But when does a new mayor come into play? Yeah,
so this week on Friday, actually, a nomination process closed for the by-election there. So that's how we're getting back into this now. We know who's going to run for mayor. Basically, he quit in June. They have 80 days or so to call a by-election. So now we have these people who are going to run. So we're taking a look like who's running. So it's complicated. The by-election is not just for mayor, it's actually for a councillor too, because one of the councillors, John Allen, resigned his seat. He wants to run for mayor again. He's been mayor in the past. He's been on and off elected in Harrison Hot Springs since the 1970s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the last 3 elections, he hasn't been able to win as mayor. He wants the mayoral chair again. He sided with Ed Wood on council. So there's John Allen trying to get into the mayor chair. Now, there's 2 other people challenging him. There's a guy named Fred Talon, who's relatively new to Harrison Hot Springs. He moved from the Northwest Territory, where he was a land claim negotiator. And he thinks that he can bring his skills as this negotiator, a conflict resolution type person, to Village Hall, and he wants to make an end to this problem. And there's a long-term resident named Greg Dykstra also running, who's a former Mountie who's been involved with the community, and who also thinks that he can solve sort of these dysfunction problems going forward. And then we have 4 other people running for council who need to get in as well. So there's, again, the kind of weird fact out of this council running is Ed Wood, the former mayor, is actually going to run for council again. He didn't respond to inquiries from us about why he wanted to get him on council, but here he is trying to get back in, being challenged by 3 other community people who say, no, enough of this dysfunction, let us on to council. We think we have a way to find consensus where others have failed.
And it's a lot of drama, and it doesn't sound like it's, Ed may have resigned, but it's feasibly not going to go away magically. So I think the question is, can the province not sort of step in and have a little bit more control over, some of this political conflict? It's personal at times too, but, is there not somebody that can step in and say, whoa, guys?
Well, Ed Wood himself asked for that all along when he was facing these trouble. He was asking for the province to come in and do some kind of audit of the village and show that he was right and others were wrong. But the province does not do that. They've basically taken a hands-off approach, asking these municipalities facing these problems, Kamloops, what have you, to solve their own problems. And so what comes into effect is that there is a way to do this. Councils can put in things like code of conducts, integrity commissioners. And Harrison had an advisor that came and looked at their council and looked at what the problems were, and that was one of the recommendations. Now, for months, they were working on it. They disagreed over it. Now, with Ed Wood gone, they finally, in July, passed the code of conduct. So new people are going to come onto council. They're going to have to sign on for a code of conduct of how they must behave. And there can be punishment for if you don't behave properly on this code of conduct. So hopefully, maybe now, Harrison will function a little better because it has these rules by which they have to govern by.
All right. We'll keep an eye on all the other dramatic infighting across the province.
Makes for interesting politics, local level, you bet.
Who knew in such a small town or village?
Well, always something to talk about. And let me tell you, people there are talking about it. So we'll see how this election goes. It's on September 21st, so we're a month out, and we'll see what results we get.
We'll touch base in a month. Thank you, Chad.
You bet.
Chad Pawson, a CBC reporter here in Vancouver. And this is BC Today, and it is 12:12. We're 2 months away from the provincial election, and on this morning's The Early Edition, Rachel Siegel, former senior director for BC United and founder of Beyond the Ballot, told host Stephen Quinn why it's a wide open race with many possibilities this year.
It's not an ideal situation that we're in right now in terms of the right in this province, but Kevin Falcon has said that he's in this. He's going to he's motivated. He's going to get to election day, and we are going to see where the cards fall. And as somebody that was at headquarters in the last election, I would say we still don't know what's going to happen, and a lot could happen in the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, what is that supposed to mean? What do you have in mind when you say a lot could happen in the next 8 weeks?
Well, take the 2020 campaign, for example. I mean, that was a crazy campaign. Yes. We were in the middle of a global pandemic. We didn't even know how to run a campaign or what a campaign bus looked like. It looked like the leader's car, really, at that point. So in terms of this campaign, I mean, who knows which candidates will do really well? Who knows what the policies that come out of all of these campaigns will be? What will resonate with British Columbians? I think we're focusing a lot on BCU, and for fair reason. But I think there's also a lot of questions around the NDP and what they're going to do for the province, and especially around the Conservative Party. I mean, John Rustad's rise is so fascinating. Yeah. Can he sustain that? Can he win his own election in his riding? I think there's a lot of questions yet to come.
That was Rachel Siegel talking with the Early Edition Stephen Quinn. Rachel is the former senior director for BC United and is the founder of Beyond a Ballot. It's hard times for small businesses in Canada. A new report by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business has shown. The report shares new data on public construction impacts on small businesses. Nearly 7 in 10 small businesses have experienced disruptions due to local construction projects in the past 5 years, marking a 27% increase since 2018. And of those affected, 22% report these disruptions have had a major impact on their business, which equates to over 260,000 small and mid-sized enterprises across the country. So we're asking you today, has your business been impacted by construction? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me now is Emily Boston. She is a senior policy analyst at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Hi, Emily. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Amy. Thanks so much for having me out today.
So, what do you think about, I guess, the findings of this new report?
So, the report analyzes the financial, operational, and emotional tolls that public construction projects have on small businesses across the country.
Hmm.
And one of the most notable findings to me is that these disruptions have increased significantly. Since the last time we conducted this research in 2018, there's been a 27% jump in small businesses that are impacted by public construction across the country, which makes sense because there's been significant investments in public infrastructure upgrades that are
Hmm.
certainly necessary and needed, but they shouldn't come at the expense of bulldozing our local small businesses.
And so, what are we seeing in terms of various issues that these small businesses face when they have, these building projects right outside their storefronts at times?
So every construction project varies in its scope and how long it goes on for
For
and the
sure.
types of small business experiences. But the vast majority report that traffic problems and parking issues are major deterrents for customers to visit their business. So dust, debris, and noise, all of these regular deterrents that both you and I experience when
Yeah.
there's a construction zone and we go shopping, these are having a significant toll on small businesses' sales. And ultimately, in BC, the businesses that are severely impacted by these construction projects report about a 50% decline in sales, as well as about an 18% decline in their revenues over the past 5 years due to these projects. So there's real consequences when these streets are shut down for such significant periods.
And then when they have such severe, economic fallout from this construction, how often do these businesses have to call it quits?
Well, we have to think about these public construction projects in the context of what small business owners have already went through. Many of them had to go through significant closures and shutdowns during the pandemic.
Hmm.
So after coming out of that and then being told, sorry, you've got to close your doors again, it's really unbelievably stressful. There's a huge emotional toll for small business owners that are just trying to see the other side of this and be able to enjoy the public infrastructure upgrades that are being invested in. So while we don't have a number of small businesses that have closed their doors due to construction impacts, we do know based on those significant financial implications that we discussed earlier that it's significantly hurting small businesses' bottom lines and forcing them to make tough decisions.
Emily, I'd love to have members of our audience join us to share their experience. If you do have experience with a small business that has been impacted by construction, give us a call now, 1 800 825 5950, 604 669 3733. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. We're just talking about the number of small businesses that are impacted by construction right across the country. Of course, here in BC, we see construction booming in many areas. We know for a fact so many businesses were affected when the Canby line went in across for the Canada line. Is there any sense that we've sort of learned lessons from these major projects that had such a negative impact, or is it still just full steam ahead with the construction with not much regard to the fallout?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's lessons learned because small business owners aren't receiving any more support than they were at that time.
Mm.
We've seen with the Broadway subway project, sorry, that many business owners along that line they were, signing up for a busy, bustling street, and instead they've been shut down for years now since 2021. And I do know that that project date was pushed back. It was originally supposed to be 2025, and then pushed back to 2026, and now it's 2027.
Yeah.
So I've actually been able to connect with small business owners located there personally, and it's heartbreaking to hear their stories of having no end in sight and feeling very left behind, and knowing that no support is coming for them. As we see other municipalities across the country and provincial governments step up to help small business owners in these precarious situations, we'd like to see more of an effort from the provincial government as well as major municipalities like Vancouver to support small businesses that are in desperate need of help.
And you did mention that, in other parts of the country, municipalities are providing more support. Where are we seeing that? And in terms of support, what is it that they're doing?
Well, we've seen some really exciting developments with construction mitigation efforts across the country, most notably in Quebec. The city of Montreal, as well as Quebec City and the city of Laval, offer compensation programs for small businesses impacted by major projects, especially ones that have extended time periods. So the city of Montreal is really the gold standard right now, and they've recently expanded their program, which is really promising. However, I would like to note that the city of Calgary is doing great work too. We're seeing these compensation programs come out west, and we'd like to see them follow in BC. They're currently piloting a project for their Marda Loop construction, which hopefully will provide much needed support to small businesses in that area. But it's challenging to be a BC small business owner and look across the border and say, why are other people able to make this work when my business is suffering so acutely?
Yeah, and I mean, presumably, construction is booming right across the country. This isn't anything that's unique to us here in Vancouver. I'm curious. You did allude to it earlier, but in terms of, you have construction, but it's coming on the heels of a pandemic when many of these businesses suffered such financial devastation at times. How are businesses still coping in the wake of the pandemic?
I think for many of them, their future feels pretty bleak. We do survey businesses regularly on their confidence about their short-term future and the long-term future, and unfortunately, their responses indicate that their confidence levels are well below historical averages. So I think that there's a lot of concern that the pandemic is in the rearview mirror for the average person, but for small businesses, they're still trying to get back on their feet. They still have debt they've taken on from the pandemic. They haven't been able to grow their operations and expand. So it's very much still a pervasive issue for them and not something that they've been able to move past, especially hospitality businesses, retail businesses that were especially impacted by COVID shutdowns. So specific industries we're seeing these lingering pandemic pains. But construction can impact any business. This is really an across the board issue, and we're going to see a lot more of it in the years to come as we need more construction. We need these developments and infrastructure upgrades. But unfortunately, it's kind of panned out into a situation where it's one or the other, where it can really be both.
Well, and then let's talk a bit more about, say, Metro Vancouver. We're a city of over 2.6 million, and you can see construction projects are everywhere. And the province is also spearheading the building of condos to address the housing crisis and expanding rapid transit corridors as necessary. How do we strike that balance between, this infrastructure development while also taking care of the small businesses who are impacted? Because one would think if they can make it through that construction stage, the buildings and the transit would actually be a benefit to them as well. It's just getting to that point.
You hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly it. They know that these infrastructure upgrades are beneficial. They know that ultimately their business and the surrounding community will benefit from them. It's difficult to hang on. And when you talk about striking that balance between how do we support small business owners while also moving forward, a lot of these are simple fixes. There is some low-hanging fruit here for both provincial and municipal governments to grab onto. One of it being better communication. About a third of small business owners across the country say that they had no idea that a major construction project was about to happen until they broke ground outside of their business.
Really?
Yes, which is just so unbelievable when you consider that it's people's livelihoods. Yeah. They don't have ample opportunity to plan and make other arrangements so that their business won't be impacted, like their operations or different service providers, whether that's also having flow of goods and services come in and out of their business. So communication is definitely key, and making sure that both provincial and municipal governments are in communication with each other so that the responsibility isn't punted back and forth between them. A lot of the time we find that there's no real accountability for who's in charge of this construction project, as well as who's in charge of the impacts from it. So making sure that there's better places for small business owners to touch base along the way, so that in examples like the Broadway subway project, small business owners aren't finding out last minute that the project's been extended for another year. And when we look at the average amount of time small business owners are weathering these storms and waiting to see the other side, like you pointed out, in BC, the average is 518 days is what small businesses are reporting. They've dealt with construction projects over the last 5 years. So it's a long haul for many of these small business owners, and they are really hoping to come out still swinging.
I do have a couple of emails that we've just received that I want to read out. One says, across Canada, there are multiple examples of municipalities that have implemented construction financial assistance funds. Montreal, Quebec, Lévis, and Calgary are all paving the way for other municipalities to implement similar policies for small businesses to help mitigate the financial impact of prolonged construction projects. Other municipalities, such as Edmonton, are actively considering mitigation options at council and exploring best practices from other jurisdictions at home and abroad. Emily, what would you like to see our government, provincially and federally, doing to help people?
So I would say follow these great leads. These fantastic construction compensation programs are the gold standard right now. So implementing similar major municipal compensation funds so that small businesses have access and are able to offset the many costs that they experience. And then from a provincial perspective, it's supporting those municipalities financially to be able to do so. We recognize that there's a cost, there's a price tag that comes along with supporting small businesses during this time, but there's a bigger price to pay when we start to lose many of our small businesses that really are the fiber of these local communities. I would also say, Montreal right now has been doing really great work in the last couple of years to make sure that small business owners have various options. They offer grants to small business owners. They offer more comprehensive yearly revenue offsetters, so small business owners are able to show them what kind of revenues they've lost so that they're adequately compensated. So really what we need is to make this a real priority. We're seeing other provinces and municipalities do that, but in BC, while there's a lot of focus on construction and building right now, as there should be, there isn't that same focus on making sure that everybody is along for that ride. So definitely making this a political priority moving forward and not just putting it on the back burner, because ultimately small businesses are still open sign along a busy construction street is not enough to small businesses right now, and that's really all they're getting currently.
I have another email to read out, this one from Randy. He writes, I shop at small indie stores for almost all my food. My two suggestions are the general contractor should be on the hook for traffic control, people who help with parking and pedestrian traffic, and the business owners should be more proactive in their online efforts to alert customers to traffic and parking changes. Thank you for those suggestions. And we have time. Oh, we did have one call, but it seems to have dropped out. But his point, I believe, was that construction does rise property taxes, and so the property owners maybe don't own the business itself, but they will make money regardless of who is a tenant for them when their property prices go up. Do we see that playing out here?
So to your first point, there's a very limited scope of things that small business owners can do themselves to mitigate these major construction projects. They're happening one way or the other. But I do think that's a great suggestion, certainly from the caller, of being able to provide more online options and looking at other ways to expand. But the reality is it's a Band-Aid solution to a big problem. And when it comes to property taxes, I do think that this is another example of it's not my problem, in terms of when the provincial government and municipal government is saying, oh, well, that's this other level of government's responsibility, or those that are, receiving property taxes are saying this, if the business is still able to stay open, as long as we're getting these funds, not our problem. It needs to be all of our problem, and we need to make sure that small business owners aren't just, kind of a property tax cash cow in the interim while they're suffering and trying to hold on. Property tax breaks are another great example of something that can be done at the municipal level to alleviate these financial burdens for businesses that are going through this. But we don't want to be overly prescriptive for municipalities or for provincial governments about how they go about offsetting these financial challenges, what's important is that they are addressed and they're not swept under the rug.
Emily, thank you so much for taking time with us today. Very, very appreciative.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was Emily Boston. She's a senior policy analyst at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, and we reached her in Vancouver. And this is BC Today on CBC. We're on Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC, YouTube at CBC Vancouver, and on the CBC News app. And coming up in our second half, we're taking a look at dumb phones and whether it's a smart solution to curb your screen time. CBC News with Belle Puri is next.
Good afternoon. BC will provide close to $1 million to help communities improve emergency evacuation routes and public notification procedures. The money will go to 22 communities to update evacuation planning, such as identifying the capacity of emergency routes. The government says the investment is necessary because the recent increase in wildfires and landslides means evacuation systems must be up to date. The province and UBC will partner to create housing for more than 1,500 students at the university's Vancouver campus. Funding will involve $300 million from the province and $260 million from the school. Construction is slated to start in the fall of 2026. Spaces will be open for students in 2028. And a possible rail strike is only days away now. Some goods are already being turned away by CN Rail and Canadian Pacific Kansas City. The two companies say workers who belong to the Teamsters Union will be locked out at midnight Thursday if there's no agreement in contract talks. The two railways employ a combined 9,300 workers. A look at the BC weather along the north coast, rain and a temperature steady near 15. In the Peace region and central interior, mainly cloudy, local smoke, the high 18 to 22. In the southeast, a mix of sun and cloud, a chance of showers and some thunder later in the afternoon, a high of 27. For the southern interior, much the same, but cooler, the high up to 24. And Greater Victoria and Metro Vancouver, mainly cloudy with showers and possibly some thunder, the highs 17 to 22. That's the CBC News from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Belle. We are going to be talking about dumb phones. Have you heard of those?
I have heard about them, and I don't think there's anything dumb about them. I think it's a smart idea.
And it seems like a lot of people are finding them smarter and smarter. So we're going to find out more about that. I told you earlier, you have to pry my phone out of my cold, dead hands. But I'm open. I'm open to learning.
I know I see a lot of good things there. One, maybe then students could take them into schools. True. They wouldn't be that much of a distraction. They would be for emergency reasons. And I sit on SkyTrain and I'm head down. Everybody has their head down. Everybody's looking at their phones. True. Let's look out the window. Let's look at the trees and the sky and the mountains.
And in the meantime, you can listen to our next segment because we're going to find out all about that. Thank you very much, Belle.
All right.
And you can find out more on today's top stories from the afternoon show in your region here in Metro Vancouver. Let's take a look at what's coming up on the coast with Gloria Makarenko.
Amy, hello there. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and I wanted to flag a few things we've got lined up for On the Coast this afternoon. Of course, we're following the big national story about the possible railway disruption in Canada. The Business Council of BC is going to join us later this afternoon. Also, think about this. It's been almost 30 years since the first cell phone with a built-in camera was sold to the public. 30 years ago. So that invention, of course, made it possible for everyone to record everything around them with just the push of a button, make it go viral at times. And it also made sure none of us could ever expect absolute privacy when we stepped outside our doors. So we're going to talk about this technological anniversary on the Coast this afternoon between 3 and 6. I hope you can join us.
So in an increasingly tech-obsessed world, could a so-called dumb idea actually be a smarter choice? Dumb phones are gaining in popularity with many people who think their smartphone usage is out of hand. But can they actually help you break free of screen time? So we want to know, Are you afraid that you're addicted to your smartphone? And will you and your family be changing your phone use for the new school year? Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell, and you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now to talk about this, we have two guests, technology analyst and journalist Carmi Levy. Hi, Carmi.
That's so good to be with you, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. We're also joined by Dr. Shimi Kang, a psychiatrist, founder of Future Ready Minds, and author of The Tech Solution, Creating Healthy Habits for a Digital World, and The Dolphin Parent. Hi, Dr. Kang.
Hi, Amy. So good to be here.
Oh, it's great to speak with you again. Carmi, I'm going to jump in and start with you, and I'll start with the, I guess, most essential question. What exactly is a dumb phone?
A dumb phone is like a smartphone with all of its smarts stripped off of it. So
Okay.
there's probably no touch screen. You're definitely not downloading apps. You're definitely not running sophisticated services. It is not a supercomputer in your pocket. It is essentially a device that does two things, and it does them very well. It makes and receives phone calls, and it makes and receives text messages. Some phones have a few additional features on top of that, but generally that's the gist of it. That's the sort of the dividing line between smartphones and dumb phones. And if you look at it, especially given the fact that you can still make and receive texts, it's not as dumb as we like to think it is.
No, I admit, like at first I thought, well, that just makes no sense. You've got a landline, you could use that, but I do see the appeal. Are we seeing, sort of, Carmi, more people turning towards this low tech option? As it's still just sort of it's something we talk about, but it's not actually playing out in real life?
No, this is a case where there are actually numbers to back up what we're seeing. So
Okay.
Counterpoint does technology research,
Mm-hmm.
and they showed that in Canada, there were about 100,000 of these devices in 2023 sold, which is about a 25% increase over 2022. In the US, in that same period, sales of dumb phones or feature phones, or as they might also be called, were up 50%. And so it's a lot like vinyl records. It's not like everyone's going to run out and ditch their smartphones now, because even at 100,000 units, it's still a tiny percentage of the overall market.
Mm-hmm.
But it means that there's a small vocal minority that is maybe looking at their smartphones and going, just not for me now. And it's sustained. This isn't just a 1 year thing. That we've been noticing this going back about 3 or 4 years since the beginning of the pandemic, and those numbers seem to be gathering steam, small as they are.
Dr. Kang, I will bring you in as well. You have spoken at length about the ways in which people of all ages are impacted by too much screen time. What are some of the signs that someone, is addicted to their cell phone? Or we toss the word addicted around, but perhaps is just using and relying on their smartphone far too much.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the word addiction, because we actually have to realize these devices were designed to be addictive, and then the algorithms that came after them as well. So some of the signs of overuse or addiction would be out of control use. So this is where you've set limits yourself. You're like, look, I'm not going to check my phone for the next 2 hours or over dinner. And you find that you just can't do that. Negative consequences, your phone use is interfering with your social life, your ability to talk to people in real life. Maybe your work is suffering, or your education. I see that all the time with people who can't focus, constantly being distracted. And those negative consequences can also be things like sleep deprivation, back pain, neck pain, because we see all the flexion with it. So there's a variety of signs and symptoms, and then cravings. I myself have been there, where I literally have had a really hard time self-regulating against my own phone. These are highly addictive, and they're really hard to really maintain that regulation for all people.
And especially for children, what are the biggest, sort of risks or signs that a parent could look out for with their child?
Yeah, so for kids, they may not tell you I'm having negative consequences, or I feel out of control. And this is where parents and teachers can really look at the signs. So one is just a lot of behavioral disturbances or disruptions when we take the phones away, or we limit the phone use in the home when the Wi-Fi gets shut off, or you're trying to set common sense limits, and there's a lot of resistance. I've seen major meltdowns. I've seen violence in the home because of it. And again, in the school, where kids are being missing out in social activities, lunch, sports. So that's something teachers and everyone can be aware of, the withdrawal from normal human activities. Kids are meant to play, that we're meant to want to be outside, we're meant to want to learn. So all of those are signs. A lot of parents will say they see their kids looking glazed or eyes glued to the screen, not even participating in the basics like hygiene, eating dinner, showering. That's more extreme, but I've seen it all, and it's quite prevalent.
Both Carmi and I were nodding when you described the glazed look. I think most people are familiar in seeing that, on those around them, or even catching a glimpse of yourself and realizing, yeah, you've been staring at that screen far too long. Would love people to call in and let us know how their relationship is maybe changing with their phone, or if they feel they are a bit addicted to it. 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733. Email bctoday@cbc.ca. And we actually do have a call already from Max in Vancouver. Hi, Max.
Hey there. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for calling us. And I believe it is of note what you're calling us from.
Yeah, I'm calling you from a Nokia 6310. It's a dumb phone.
Is it a flip phone?
It's not a flip phone.
Okay.
It looks like one of the Nokias that we all used to have in the early 2000s.
Know it well.
And it's actually really difficult to switch to. There are not many carriers in Canada anymore that support the networks that these dumb phones have access to.
Oh, really?
So, switching took a long time to sort of research and figure out what was available in North America, and then specifically in Canada.
And what was the reasoning behind you wanting to make this change, Max?
I guess I just got sick of social media. I deleted all my social media last year, and then I had been wanting to switch to a dumb phone for a long time, and did the research. And there are some sort of hybrid phones that people can switch to. I had one of those for a little bit, so it has a keypad, but it's also a touch screen. It has some access to apps, Gmail, and stuff like that. And then after a little bit, I switched to this Nokia, and I'm still experimenting, trying to find which phones work best in Canada.
Right. And are you, I guess, sort of feeling a change in your own behavior? Has this, so far, I guess, how long have you been using this feature phone, as they also call them?
Since November, I switched over to it's an Android phone, but it's essentially it's not very functional as a smartphone, which is what you're looking for. It's got a very small screen, and the benefits of switching over were immediate. I think we've all been sitting on the couch at night watching a show, maybe with our significant other, and then we find ourselves looking at our phone. All of those sort of behaviors stop instantly, at least for me, without even thinking about it. It wasn't a sort of like trial period of wanting to go back to the smartphone. It just ended, and it was really great.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, good luck with that, Max, and thanks for calling in on your alternate phone. Much appreciated.
Yeah, of course. All right, thank you.
Carmi, I have to say, it seems like, every few months there is a new phone out. It's filled with the latest technology. Is that pendulum swinging? Or is this just the latest fad or a way to push more sales? As you said, it's kind of like the turntable. Is this just something to, get the hipsters and see what happens? Or are we sort of seeing that perhaps we got ourselves in a bit of trouble with so much technology and we need to dial it back?
I think it's a small but growing minority that recognizes that we have gone too far with smartphones, that we have become subservient to the addictive technology that is, as Dr. King rightly indicates, is built into this technology. That's what it's designed for. Mark Zuckerberg called them little hits of dopamine. It's by design. And so I think, I think folks like Max, here he is, he's going on almost a year with this device, and he's certainly not going to go back to the way it used to be. Mm-hmm. So that's a significant commitment. And I think there's a certain group within society that I think recognizes the corrosive effects of smartphones and is willing to make that longer term commitment. Is it everybody? Absolutely not, because I think the vast majority of society still needs the banking app, still needs the GPS, still needs the social media, still needs all of the other things to get through their personal and professional days. But I don't think this is it's a small trend, lowercase T with an asterisk attached to it, but I don't think it's going anywhere.
Okay.
I think the numbers will continue to do that slow build in much the same way we still see folks on the fringe of social media seeking vinyl for their turntables. We'll have the same thing here.
Psst, I've got a dumb phone you could borrow. Just keep it in the trunk.
Yeah, over here. Don't tell anyone.
Dr. Kang, are you noticing any sort of change in attitudes that maybe, maybe especially parents are starting to go, you know what, maybe this isn't a great idea for my kids, or sort of dialing back their own tech use?
Yes, I am. Thankfully, I've been talking about this for years. And I remember when I was researching the tech solution book, there was a belief among parents in the school system that, a good school or a good program had lots of tech. And that's why it's really important that it's not a pro or anti-tech conversation. It's about healthy use, use that empowers us, that helps us learn, not distracts us and makes it addictive. So I'm finding that as the research is clear, and we know now that tech use is being linked to anxiety, depression, addiction, body image issue, gaming disorder is now a medical diagnosis, internet use disorder, a medical diagnosis in Europe. Plus the physical effects of like tech neck and back and shoulder and sleep deprivation, and then blue light linked to heart disease, diabetes. All of this research is coming out more and more. Initially, we were in a honeymoon period. We thought it was going to improve our lives, which in some ways it has, without the downside. So now I think people are more aware and making better choices.
All right. A few more calls coming in, actually quite a few calls. This is definitely piquing people's interest. Ray calls us from Vancouver. Hi, Ray.
Yes, hello.
And what are your thoughts on these phones?
Well, I was telling your screener that I'm phoning mainly because the first caller, I got the impression that he, without listening really, really careful, that it's hard to find a carrier, which is not true.
Okay.
I'm signed up with TELUS, and I've been signed up since 2011.
Okay.
And the last time I used the phone, I use it for the original intended purpose, which was for emergencies and for important contact with close friends, for example. And it's $3 a month.
Okay.
And I think it's called the $3 plan with TELUS, and there's a downside to that. The texting, I don't agree that the texting is convenient.
Okay.
Like your colleague there said, it's pretty awkward. The keys have got 3 letters and numbers and various punctuations and everything.
I remember those days. It was always difficult.
It's pretty awkward, but
it is.
But that's in the case of my old one. The new ones, I called them newer ones. The newer, and let's not call them dumb phones. Let's call them superior intellect phones. SIPs for short.
I love it.
But there's I didn't get to. I have a second highly related topic, and that's strictly the finances, which I just hinted on. $3, but the point is that the downside is that text messages coming and going are $1, I think.
Okay, so and quite a steep price.
A number of other costs that they add.
Okay.
But the part that I want to say is that for what is it? For the purchase of a smartphone, but don't activate it, and then get a service that is available that gives you Wi-Fi. So for a total outlay of a little over $200 once that you pay once for it. You buy the stuff outright, and then it's $15 per month that gives you, that provides you with local Wi-Fi, and so you can use all the features you want. The catch is you only get 4 gigs.
Okay.
Now, I never, ever, ever use up 4 gigs, even though I use it to watch YouTube.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to prevent some people from having access to, but I do appreciate...
No, listen to me. 4 gigs, not 400 gigs.
Oh, I see. Okay.
4 gigs.
All right.
$15 a month.
Ray, I do want to get a few other callers in here, but I really appreciate you joining us today. We're going to take a call from Gully in Vancouver. Hi, Gully. Gully, are you there? Oh, we'll try Maureen in Penticton. Hi, Maureen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. What are your thoughts on the changes in phone technology?
I hate it.
Yeah? You hate the feature phones, or you hate the smartphones?
I hate all of it.
Okay.
I used to work at BC Tel at the time, and the phones never broke. You rented them.
Okay.
And you paid $2.30 more a month if you had touch calling. And I had a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
I lost it, and I wanted to throw it into Skull Lake many times because I don't like the way people use them. I took my daughter out for dinner on her birthday.
Mm-hmm.
She had her cell phone out, and she was sitting there texting.
Mm.
And I said, okay, Lindsay, we're at a nice restaurant. Shut the phone off. Don't look at it. Don't have it on vibrate.
Mm-hmm.
I said, in fact, give it to me. I'll give it to you at the end of the dinner.
And how did that go over with your daughter, Maureen?
Well, I said, I'm paying for this. It didn't go over well at first, but we had conversation.
We were able to enjoy each other's time a little bit better.
And we talked about things we hadn't talked about in a long time. But if I let her keep the phone, she would have sat there and texted all the whole time.
Yeah, I've been in a situation like that, and I think many parents have been. And I thank you for bringing that up, Maureen. And Dr. King, I'll ask you, as we are heading back to school, where many areas are now either banning or putting very strict rules on phone usage. Are we more and more changing our approach to kids in technology?
Yes. Again, because of the research is so clear. And because I think not just research, families are noticing the change, just like the caller talked about. I have 3 teenagers, and it's really tough to parent with phones around and be a teacher with phones around. Now, I don't like the word ban. I think having limits, what the research shows that when the phone is shut off in a backpack or locker, the attention is better. There's better focus, there's better learning, there's better sense of community and friendship, and really important, less bullying, and everyone's happier. So it's really a no-brainer, but there is a lot of pushback, and I feel bad for teachers and administrators because parents are stressed and anxious. What do we do if we can't reach our kids? Kids, of course, don't want to give it up. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation moving into the school year, because this is new, definitely in BC, but we're seeing whole countries taking this approach. The UK, I was just there, did it. So we know that if we can set these limits and be that parent, that frontal lobe, especially for young people who don't have one till 25, not only are we seeing healthier, happier people, we're seeing better community, more connection, and overall just better results across the board with very little downside.
Carmi, do you have any ideas for parents in terms of approaching technology? Have you sort of seen what works and what they should maybe steer clear from?
Yeah, and I say this as the husband of an elementary school teacher
Okay.
who has taught kindergarten grades 1 and grade 2 and has seen over the years this kind of gradual invasion of devices
Yeah.
at ever younger ages. And I think the one thing that jumps out at me is so many parents will tell their children what to do, how to use. In other words, this is not the time for you to be using their phones. And then they'll turn around and they won't model those behaviors. They'll, in fact, stand in the
Yes.
parking lot at pickup time with their heads down, not interacting with the other parents, ignoring the traffic around them. So I think the one thing that jumps out at me is, for all parents, if you want to set that right example for your kids about appropriate use, not just of smartphones, but of all technologies, then you have to model those appropriate behaviors as well, because kids will follow what you do much more quickly, much more robustly than what you say. And if there's a gulf between the two, guess what? The kids will just bore right in. They'll do whatever they want.
Yes. Do as I say, not as I do. Isn't that the parenting adage? I've just got
Yes.
a couple of emails to include. Jim writes, are there dumb phones available that aren't a flip phone type with their awkward keypad to send 3 texts, 3 letters per button? Carmi, real quick before we're almost out of time. I'm assuming they have those.
There absolutely are. There's a whole range of phones. You don't have to stick to that T9 keyboard. There are some with full-on QWERTY keyboards and stuff. For example, the Light phone offers a number of options. Shop around. They're not always at the front of the website. Sometimes you have to dig a little bit, maybe go to the back of the store, ask a few questions, but they are out there.
And Marjorie writes, voicemail was invented to take a message when you were not available or willing to answer the phone. If there is no emergency in your family and if you are not working, why do you feel you have to answer the phone when you're out hiking in the woods? We do not have to know right away or always be available. And I think that is incredibly wise of Maureen. Well, we're out of time, so we will have to leave it there, but we'll chat with you both in the near future. This is always an exciting topic, so thank you both.
Appreciate
you.
Here. Thank you.
Dr. Shimi Kang, psychiatrist, founder of Future Ready Minds, author of The Tech Solution, Creating Healthy Habits for a Digital World, and the Dolphin parent and technology analyst and journalist, Carmi Levy. That's it for our show. Thank you for calling in and joining the discussion. You can always email us bctoday@cbc.ca.